master's courses, thinking of doing one part-time? Stay tuned because I'm going to give you some things that you need to think about.
Lions roaring in the morning sun, searching for a longer day.
Hi, I'm Lisa. Welcome back to my channel. This is a question I've been asked about many times over the years. I don't know why I haven't created a video about it until now, but here we go. So I'm going to go through some positives and negatives of doing a master's degree part-time. I think some of these things are really hard to know or find out without living it. So I'm hoping that this video will help a few people out. Some quick background info on me, just so you know where I'm coming from. I did my master's part-time in Animal Behaviour at the University of Exeter way back in 2008 now. After my undergrad, I was working full-time to save up to do some volunteering with research in South Africa. That was supposed to be a 10-week trip, and I ended up staying for 9 months. So I decided that I wanted to do my master's, but I'd pretty much put myself in not a great financial position then. So I knew I was going to have to work. I had a full-time and a part-time job as well to be able to save up to then do my master's the following year. I don't think it was only a month or two of being back and working that I was like, oh man, like I just want to do my course and get on with my life. I think when you finally realize what it is that you want to do, you just want to get on and do it. So I did some research. I can't remember if I realized that you could do a master's part-time before I realized that you can get a career development loan. I didn't know which way around those came. Those two things, career development loan and the fact that you could do a master's part-time, I thought, wow, this is amazing. It means I don't have to wait a year. I can just get straight on and do what I want to do, basically. If I'm honest, at the time, the money was the only thing I thought of. I thought positive, the money isn't so much of an issue anymore. The negative, that it would take longer. That's pretty much all I considered. And I think actually doing it and looking back at it, there's so many more factors that you need to consider, both positive and negative. I'm going to start with the positives. So firstly, the money, and obviously the reason why I did it is that you're paying half the tuition fees. So if money is an issue, it's a lot more achievable. Now, there is definitely a negative side to this, and I'm going to wait till I get onto my negatives. But the money thing, it's not all it's cracked up to be, and there's definitely some things that you need to know. So wait for that section. So the next one is enabling work experience. Now, this is not something I considered at the time, but retrospectively looking back at it, it was definitely a bonus. And I think now, as I've said in so many videos, that your degree is not enough. You have to have experience outside that. And I think with a full-time master's, it's easy to become so immersed in your actual kind of work and grades and everything that you're not thinking, or you don't have time for things outside that. Obviously, you've got a job doing it part-time, but I think it gives you a little bit more freedom to get involved in other things and get a kind of wider perspective. So the big thing in my master's was that I was able to take part in a ant study looking at ant cognition. It was me and a full-time student that actually initially started doing this project, but the hours were a lot, and he actually dropped out from doing it and I continued. And I think it's because I had a little bit more flexibility and almost headspace to do it. He obviously had a lot of kind of deadlines at one time, whereas outside of that, I was I had my job, which wasn't mentally taxing. I don't want to be rude or anything, but it's not like I didn't have to do anything outside my work time. I didn't have to kind of think about it after I went home. When I clocked off. So I could be a little bit more pushing myself with hours. And I mean, it wasn't easy. I think 1 week I was 81 hours in the lab on top of my job, and I was doing my dissertation in a zoo at the time. And obviously doing my master's work as well. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy. I was in the lab sometimes till gone midnight. But I feel like I would not have been able to even entertain that idea if I was doing it full time. I would have felt that it was risking my master's too much. In the end, I got paid for doing it, and I got a publication out of it, and I got some really good experience, and I basically got not experience of what I wanted to do, but nearly as important experience of what I didn't want to do. Like, I realized that I enjoyed it, but I realized that this wasn't a career path for me. So I feel like doing a master's part-time maybe gives you a little bit more freedom to do other things. There is one kind of caveat, that it does depend on what job you have. Someone who's already in like a career job where they've got a full-time job in the career that they want to go in, and if they perhaps like have to take work home with them, or like they can't just shut off at the end of the day, that would be a bit more difficult. But I was working in a clothes shop, probably the same working for a lot of shops, but you get kind of a minimum contract, and you can do those hours or you can take extra hours. There were times where I would do a lot more kind of paid work, and times where I would do a lot more kind of master's work. So the job I had, it was very flexible, and I don't know if everyone will have that, so that's something to think about. The other thing is the type of job. If you have kind of a very mentally taxing job where you don't just like, you go home and you can't just forget about it, you've got things going on. Like, I had a job that you just turned up, you left. So I would be on the tills or the fitting rooms or whatever, and there's sometimes that you can kind of just mentally switch off and go into kind of autopilot of what you're doing, and in that time kind of really think about like what essay you've got going or something else. So I found it was like a nice break. You have really good ideas sometimes when you're in the shower or when you're doing the dishes, and your kind of body's busy doing other things, but your mind is kind of is going. And I feel like that was a really nice balance for me. So the next one is, I think it gives you more time to develop your research interests. A year goes by really fast, and it's really intense. And I think by having it part-time, it sort of gives you the time to settle in and see what fits with you. You don't have to jump straight into your like what you're going to do for your dissertation. You've got kind of a little bit of time to see what fits you and what can fit into your career. So I think it's kind of the different perspectives of looking at it, as in like, right, I've got to get this master's, I've got to get a good result and get it done and move on, as opposed to, I want to really shape my career and make the most of the opportunities and really kind of develop my career starting from that point. Your experiences at university can really be affected by who you are with, who your course mates are, who you gel with or who you don't gel with. And luckily, I had a really good experience both years. I had two very different groups of course mates. I would say my first year course mates, it was a very, very small cohort. I think there was only about 6 or 7, maybe not even that. It was all girls. I lived with 3 of them. We had a very, very kind of close bond. It was really nice and supportive. And then the next year I had a very different group of people. It was a much larger group, much more kind of diverse people from different backgrounds. I think it was 50-50 weighted male and female. I mean, it was a long time ago, but I kind of enjoyed there was a lot more banter. It was a lot, I didn't have such a close relationship, a tight relationship with them, but I had a very nice relationship with more of them, if that makes sense. I think doing it part-time possibly gives you kind of the, almost a longer time to enjoy the university experience and to get kind of different experiences. The next one is on kind of friendships and course mates as well. I think that having a life outside of university, you're mixing with different people as well. So it's not like it's so easy to get so immersed in your course and the people around it. I kind of felt like by the second year I had got kind of a strong kind of friendship group with my work colleagues that I went out with them just as much, if not more, than I did my course mates in the second year. So I felt like I had both of those worlds, and they would go to, very different places and have very different conversations. And it was just kind of a nice break to be able to kind of remove myself from the kind of bubble of the master's group. Another huge positive is obviously that your deadlines are spread out. So whereas you know, my full-time course mates, they would have a couple of deadlines that would kind of be like right up against each other, whereas I didn't. I had those spread out, so you're able to get kind of more headspace on each task rather than like trying to, you know, oh, I've got 3 big deadlines coming up and having to kind of split your kind of mind to them. Like as a part-time student, I feel like you get to focus on, you know, less things at a time to be able to kind of do them well and go on to kind of the next task. So the last one of the positives is that you might have more time to kind of take on extra classes. So for example, if you struggled with something in the first year, then maybe you could sit in on classes in the second year. This depends very much on what university and what specific course. I know some of the smaller kind of lab courses or ones with field trips you won't be able to do multiple times, but if it's kind of large statistics classes, which quite a few people from different courses are going to, you might be able to kind of sit in and on the second way around and get kind of a deeper understanding of it. Now I don't think obviously your grades would come from the first time that you chose to do that particular kind of strain of lectures or whatever it is, but to get kind of the best out of your learning, that might be an option. Now, again, you need to check your specific course that you are going to do if that is even allowed. But if it is, that's a positive. I don't think I did that. I don't think I did that because I don't think I had time. I was really busy in my second year. But looking back, I probably should have done that because stats, I don't think stats is anyone's real strong point, is it? Well, I guess there's a few people out there envious of them. Okay, that's it for the positives, and now moving on to the negatives. So obviously the number one thing is money and finances. Is often a strong reason why people would do a part-time master's, but it is not all it cracks up to be. Trust me, I got a nasty surprise. And I don't know, maybe I was stupid and I should have known this. I literally had no clue. And I think it was a few weeks into being there, I got smacked with a huge council tax bill. And I was like, this has got to be a mistake. And they basically made me, or billed me for council tax for the entire flat. So I was sharing with 3 other full-time students. I signed on to my master's really late. Obviously I made like quite a kind of late decision, and I moved in with 3 full-time students that I didn't know, and I got a bill saying that I had to pay for the entire place because they were full-time students and I was part-time student. So not paying for myself, paying for the whole place for everyone. They're exempt, so I had to cover it. And I was just like, this has to be a mistake. So I went to the council tax office and I was so upset because I just got a very sarcastic, well, you chose to move into a 4-bedroom flat right in the centre of Exeter. And I'm like, seriously, it was like the last place I could find. It was
a converted brewery, a basement flat. It was mouldy, cold. My windows, it kind of opened onto a car park. There was like a bar next door, and it had like that much of light in it. Bathroom was mouldy. The toilet was mouldy. It was cold.
It was not a luxury place to live, and to be paying that amount of council tax on it, and not even just for myself, I was just. And it's something you have to look at on your contract, because as a 4, we kind of signed a contract together, and that made me liable for the whole property. Whereas in my second year, I was obviously a bit more savvy, and I, because I didn't move in with kind of a group of people, I just moved into a room in a 4-bedroom flat, actually the same building. I just kind of went up. And I had an actual view, I had light. My contract was for my room in the property. So I only had to pay 25% of the council tax. I didn't have to pay the whole lot. So that's just, it's something that you really need to look out for, because it was definitely a huge bill which I wasn't anticipating. And I got very, very upset and panicked about it, and I felt like I was working just to pay it off. So definitely something you really need to consider and understand what you're going to need to pay wherever you're going to live. Another important thing on the finance side to consider if you are a part-time student is that you're not entitled to the same kind of discount on some things as you would be if you're a full-time student. The main one I can remember is kind of transport, but I know there were others. The big kicker actually was conferences, that if you're a part-time student, you have to pay full price to go to certain kind of animal behaviour, conservation, whatever conferences. The biggest kicker was one, I can't remember which conference it was, but it was being held at my own university. But all my classmates could go for free and I had to pay full price. And I couldn't go because I couldn't afford it. The next negative, and a lot of these are obviously financial at the beginning, is that student loans, if you are a postgraduate student as opposed to undergrad, where you only have to pay back your loan if you're earning a certain amount, you don't have that same flexibility with the loans that you get for postgraduate degrees. So I got a career development loan. It's essentially a bank loan, and you have, I think, a 2-month holiday after you finish your course, but you have to pay it back no matter what. You have to pay, it's not, it's a set amount. It's not dependent on what you were earning. And that is really tough on someone to have kind of 2 months just to get yourself like a decent job to be able to start paying that back. And I was working abroad, and yeah, I've really struggled with paying back my student loan, because I think at one point the exchange rate was so bad I was earning less than my monthly payments were back, and I had to like pay a lot in fees to even get it back to the UK. So it was, yeah, you have to just think about that. So moving on from the finance side now, looking at the more course specific and kind of social side of it, I mentioned in the positives that it was good that you had less deadlines. The flip side of that is you actually feel more pressure to do a lot better because you have less deadlines. I don't know if this was anyone else putting this on me or me putting it on myself, but you kind of feel like, oh, you've got more time essentially, although you don't because you're working, but kind of feels like you have more time to dedicate it. So you don't have the same kind of excuses as your kind of full-time course mates, that they might have like 2 or 3 deadlines at once and you've got 1. So you feel like you have to be getting like a really high grade. So the other negative is a little bit of a strange one, because you're in that city or wherever it is to study and work. So you have to stay there. Whereas you find that the full-time students, they'll go home for Easter or Christmas, and for the summer holidays, and you're kind of left there. You still have to work. And as I worked at a shop, the busiest time was kind of Christmas and sale time, and I had to work really late, I think on Christmas Eve, and I had to start at 5 o'clock in the morning, maybe, or maybe even earlier. I had to be there because I think it opened at 5 on Boxing Day. So you can't go away. I think I went home for like the day, and then like I think someone gave me a lift or something. But it's kind of like turns into kind of a bit of a ghost place. And also you have like a weird time, because the master's kind of finishes, I want to say like May-ish, because people are then doing their dissertations, their placements. Some people were going abroad. So I actually had May till I think September, October, when the next kind of year started again, sort of like totally on my own in Exeter. So not totally on my own, because I did have work friends, but it's a very weird kind of like in between time stage before like the new people start, and it's quite like, you know, nervous to see who the new people are going to be. I think that's another one, like you're not having that university thing of going home and then coming back at term time. Like you are there and people leave you. There's also the negative that you are the minority. I was the only part-time student. I'm pretty sure I was the only part-time student in both of the years. In my second year, I was nicknamed 0.5 all the time. And I mean, it was a lot more kind of banter and jokey, and I liked it. It was fine. But there was definitely, like, I didn't quite 100% fit in with everybody there. And I think that's also another negative, in that you miss out on some work and social things. So like guest lectures, I missed quite a lot of the time because they were always on certain afternoons that I was contracted to work. There were certain meetups and things that I would have to miss because I was working. And I think when you're a full-time student, as long as it's outside of your lecture hours, you've got a lot more flexibility to just kind of drop what you're doing and go to something. I couldn't do that. So I did feel that I missed out on some things. Studying part-time can also be challenging because you're kind of mentally switching between your work and your course. Some people do really good at that, and some people really struggle, and they need to kind of dedicate their whole kind of mind to being in that course and getting it done. And there are other people that are kind of quite happy with that balance. Sometimes I just struggle, but generally I was fine. And I actually think I should have said this on the positive side, but I actually think that's a really good, it's a way of preparing you for actual working life, because in your job, especially if you're going to work in conservation, you're never going to be able to dedicate 100% of the time to what you are trained to do, what you're interested in. There will always be other things. I've done a lot of videos on how important other skills are when working in conservation. I think sometimes you can get into kind of very academic headspace and want to 100% focus on something. And outside of university, you can't do that. It's just not realistic. So I think having that kind of opportunity to work in that way, it really, I think it gives you a lot more of understanding and good kind of training in how the workplace is going to actually be. So I think that's everything. I would say there's, just to end it off, there are a few questions you need to ask yourself. If you're doing it for the finances, you really need to have a look exactly what the conditions are with where you're going to live, your loan agreements. You realistically just don't take things on the face of it, like me, like, oh, part-time half, yay, it's going to be easy. You should, really properly evaluate. The other thing to think about is to look at what job that you're doing or what job you want to do while you do your master's part-time. Really look at the kind of the type of job, the hours, how flexible it can be. My job was really flexible, and actually something really big changed within my dissertation at the time. Something huge was going to happen in the zoo that would affect my whole project, and I had to be there. And my boss gave me the day off with no notice. They always knew that I would do extra when I could. So I think you just have to look at what kind of job you're going to do outside that and what flexibility it will give you. So you may think that having kind of very strict, rigid hours will help you get into kind of a routine and help with that kind of headspace of work and university. But you also need to look at it on the other way of flexibility. There is going to be times when you're busier, times when you're quieter, and you might need to kind of offset that in your workspace. So is that an option for you? Overall, I can't tell you whether you should do a master's part-time or not. I think you really need to look at your motivations for doing it and just try to kind of factor all these things in and think about how it would work for you. Hopefully even a couple of people have found this useful if you are considering doing a part-time master's. If you did find it helpful, please click on that like button to say thank you. If you know someone who's considering doing a part-time master's, or someone who's even just considering doing a full-time master's. If you can share this video with them, they might not have thought of some of the benefits of doing it part-time. It might be helpful to them. As always, thank you for spending the time with me today. Bye.